What is up, you guys? This is Alessandro Koenig, and we are on Conan's Cave. Today we have Matt Hoodie on our podcast as a special guest. I'm going to be asking him a series of questions about his life, what got him into nutrition. All right, so question number one, Matt, what got you into nutrition? We all got to know.
I was overweight. I think most people know that, but I was up over 300 pounds at my heaviest. Going through high school, I played World of Warcraft. I did not eat right. I did not exercise. I did not do anything. And by the time I started my freshman year of college, I was 319 pounds at my heaviest. And I ended up having to go to a doctor for something unrelated, and I got diagnosed as pre-diabetic. And that was kind of the turning point for me. I didn't really know anything about diabetes. And I got online and you start Googling and you see people losing their vision and people losing limbs and things like that. And I have kind of a type A personality, and I just decided to go, jump out of food and go all in on nutrition. And I kind of realized at that point, I kind of had to look in and say, like, my relationship with food is not good enough for me to go do what I want to do right now. I'd always wanted to be a chef. I still love cooking. I love cooking at home. I love doing recipes. I just do it a little bit differently now. So I found my passion for the nutritional side of things. And as soon as I jumped into it, I just wanted to learn as much as I could. And then I saw that after I lost the weight, kind of like we talked about, I think a lot of people seek me out because I've been there before. So I noticed that I was getting a lot of people coming to me, and, I had the education, having studied, dietetics, and then staying and doing, exercise and wellness. And I had a different degree of education than people who were just personal trainers. Maybe it's like, when you spend time in school for specifically just nutrition, there's no kinesiology courses in the program. There's, the exercise side of it is completely different. And I kind of wouldn't say fell in love, but I like that side of it. Obviously I own a gym. I wouldn't if I didn't, but the nutrition side is what I fell in love with. And I kind of realized that the exercise component is, I don't want to say equally as important, but I would say very, very important too. Yeah.
That's actually very interesting that you said that, because I went through a very similar thing in my past, and it was really impactful to just overcome it and really go all into nutrition. And what got you into the exercise side of things?
So I was focused on nutrition for probably about the first year and a half to 2 years when I was losing the weight. I lost about 120 pounds from my high to my low. I'm still down a little over 100 of that at this point, but I've kind of built muscle and things like that. But yeah, definitely fell in love with nutrition, and then kind of realized, like, hey, if I'm going to do this, I should learn about the exercise side. And that was what caused me to stay in school and finish the exercise and wellness degree. And it ended up being very advantageous, because when I came out of school, opened up the gym, and I had both sides, right? I had the nutrition, but I also had the training as far as my education went. And I had the experience as far as, having been in that position myself. Had the gym now for 9 years, I think.
Oh, wow.
Up in North Scottsdale. We've worked with thousands of people at this point. We've got a handful of trainers up there who are full-time. So it's all come together, but it's definitely been in phases. I fell in love with the nutritional side first, and that was definitely brought about, I think, a little bit by my love for food. But also just, I saw how many other people were being misled. It's like, you see how much misinformation there is out there. And I realized that when I was fat, I followed all this bullshit that these people told me to do. And I realized it's just a bunch of people trying to make money off you. It's people telling you it's only this way or the highway, this way or the highway. And you go to school for it, you learn that's not the case. I mean, you know that, right? Obviously. And there are principles, like we talked about, that dictate everything. But if I can teach somebody how to take those principles and relate them to their life, that person is going to be set forever. As opposed to taking somebody, pushing them inside a keto box or a carnivore box or a paleo box or a whatever box and saying, you have to do this. I kind of build the box around the person once I get all the information about them. And I think that's the real kind of differentiator between my approach and people who maybe just make like a meal plan.
Okay, so I gotta know, brother, what is your opinion on Eddie Abdu? You always preach about cut and dry organic nutrition. And so when influencers like that come to play, it's pretty insane how they push their agenda onto others for clout and content chasing, right? So I got to know, what is your opinion on all that? Why do you think Eddie does that? Why do you think he demonizes sugar so much?
Someone like Eddie Abdu is an example of somebody who is causing harm and serious detriment to the industry. And people don't realize, I talk about this all the time, they don't understand that eating disorders have a higher mortality rate than any mental health disorder, including PTSD and depression. Like, if you think about that for a sec, eating disorders have a higher mortality rate than any mental health disorder. And he's going out there and he's vilifying all these things. And when you start looking into the development of anorexia nervosa, bulimia nervosa, and the psychological aspect of fear-mongering these foods and what it's leading to, we have the highest rates of eating disorders in young and in young adults and in fully grown adults that we've ever had. Where do you think that's coming from? Social media. It's from all of these people saying, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad. You have no idea if that's bad. Eddie is an example of somebody who just doesn't understand anything. I don't know if you've ever seen the video where he goes, do you know why they call this gluten? Or because it's like glue. Have you seen that? The man, he says because it's like glue. And he's right. Gluten does create an elasticity to bread. That's not why it's called gluten. Gluten is a wheat protein, right? The man just has no understanding of anything. I think he hates seed oils too. He has no understanding of nutritional chemistry whatsoever. And he just bashes things. The ironic part is he's done all of the things that he bashes. And he looks amazing. The guy has incredible physique, right? He's talked about doing PEDs. That's the other thing. That's the other side to it, right? He's obviously on PEDs right now. Like, you and I both know that. He doesn't ever talk about that. He talks about putting all these things in your body, but he's obviously on PEDs, right? Yep. And so it's like, how are you going to preach that this is going to hurt you, that the canola oil with a great ratio of the omega-3s to omega-6s is going to be harmful to you? But we all know that you're injecting steroids into yourself every day. So I don't know. People like him, I don't even really view them as being in the same field as me. I don't think he actually has an education. I don't know that he has a degree or anything. I doubt it.
How did your first weight loss journey go? I can only imagine it was just very complicated. You're trying to learn a bunch. That's how it was for me. So
when I finished my weight loss, I lost 120 pounds. Done it in a terrible way. I mentioned I wasn't doing resistance training. I wasn't doing anything right. I wasn't eating the right distribution of fats. My hormones were screwed up. I lost 120 pounds. I gained back 60 of it at one point because I had done it in such a terrible way. I had just tanked my metabolism. And I was not in the position until I finished school and then worked with people pro bono for a handful of years to start working with anybody else. And I think nowadays the emergence of social media has caused people to just think, oh, well, I changed and my video went viral. Now I have 200,000 followers. Let me sell a program. Well, do you know how to coach people? Do you understand anything about other human bodies? If you get a 43-year-old mom of two to sign up, are you going to understand if she's, pre-menopause, how to handle that and how to adjust things? Or do you know any of these things? Or are you a 24-year-old male who lost 100 pounds and looks amazing and whose video went viral? Right. Because that's what I'm seeing from a lot of these people too, is they changed, their video pops off, whatever, crazy transformation. Maybe they were 500 pounds and now they're 200, lost 300 pounds. It doesn't mean you know anything. Trust me. As somebody who was in that same position, I got so many things wrong in those first, I still get things wrong. But in the first 2 to 3 years, it really takes that long of you working with people before I really think, you think about apprenticeships and stuff that you have in the trade schools and things like that. This is more similar, in my opinion, to trade school when you talk about Instagram and things like that, but nobody wants to do the apprenticeship with this. People just want to go straight into making money. And it's like, well, you didn't go to school, so you didn't get an education. And if you had gone to trade school, you would have had to do an apprenticeship to learn how to do this. So you really have no experience and you have no education. So what do you have that you can offer anybody?
All right. So what do you think about niche-based trainers? There's so many of them that exist right now.
One of the funniest things that I find hilarious is I work with men 30 to 50 who need to lose. I'm like, stop. You'll work with anybody who DMs you. Stop. Like, I know how busy you are. You will work with anybody who DMs you. You don't only have 2 spots left. All of this bullshit about I'm a coach for busy business owning professional. You don't know. Maybe one person owns a business and works 7 days a week and has to go into an office. Another guy has work from home. How are you better equipped to work with both those people? They have completely, I do think that people have tried to use the whole niche thing. Like, look how niche I am. I'm so specialized to pull more clients. And there are certain things that I look and I go, well, a 20-year-old, none of those things involve any sort of specialization. If you have the knowledge in that field, you can absolutely specialize in multiple facets. You look at someone like John Jewett, who I'm sure you're familiar with, the pro bodybuilder, dietitian, right? Same background. Oh, yeah, really smart guy, works with bodybuilders, also works with weight loss lifestyle clients. One of the best bodybuilding prep coaches in the world. Also, the majority of his clients, not bodybuilders. They're regular lifestyle clients, women who need to lose weight. right? So it's like he's somebody who preps people and puts people on stage in the best condition. And more of his clients are just regular weight loss clients. So I think that you can have multiple specialties. I think it's more rare for you to be really good at multiple things. But I think if there is actual experience needed, right? Like you mentioned, bodybuilding coach. If you don't know anything about PEDs and the person is competing in an untested organization, you're going to be a terrible coach. You're not going to be able to help them at all unless they already have that side. If you don't understand how PEDs modify your muscle protein synthesis or modify your recovery or modify whatever, you're going to be a terrible coach because you won't know how to adjust protein, how to adjust training volume, how to adjust. So if you, I agree. I think you need to have those knowledge, or those pieces of knowledge, but I think somebody can have those in multiple facets, right? Mm-hmm. And somebody like that would be a perfect example.
I love that. So how do you handle an overweight person coming into your facility? What's the process that you take action with?
So, I mean, the first thing for anybody, right, without getting any more info, the person being overweight wouldn't really dictate anything unless I got a whole lot more info, like an overweight mother of two. Then I could do something with that. But an overweight person coming in, or a person who wants to build muscle, whatever it may be, it's going to be the same thing. It's going to be sitting down with them. I have an intake form that is, pretty in-depth. I ask people for a lot of information, talk to them about their past, talk to them about other people if they've ever worked with anyone else, what has worked, what has not, other diets they've tried in the past, their relationship with food, gather all that information. And then obviously the biometric statistics too, right? Their height, their weight, their activity level, their estimated body fat if they have one, what they're doing for training, if they have injuries, things like that, right? Like all the generic info that you need. But a lot of the questions on that intake form are also related to, just kind of their relationship with food their whole life, from childhood up until now, their changes that have occurred to their body throughout their life, and, kind of how that's, how they got to where they're at, what their story is basically. Like kind of like, tell me your story. That's the first thing whenever I talk to somebody. So it's essentially getting their story, and then they'll put it down on paper for me if they decide to work with me. They'll put it down on paper, and then I'll take, like I mentioned, those biometric statistics, and I have an algorithm that I built myself. It's based on a dietetic equation, Mifflin St. Jean, Harris Benedict, things like that. So it's my own modified version of that I use, and I'll plug that in for the biometric statistics. And then I will modify if there's anything else going on. Medications, if somebody's on SSRIs, you have to adjust for that because we know that dampens your metabolism a little bit. It's going to decrease how many calories you're burning, dampens your parasympathetic nervous system. So you're just not going to quite be as metabolically active. That's why we see people gain weight. So it's like, there's so, like I could go on forever, but if you really want to be able to effectively help somebody and help them keep it off, you need to know all those things. Now, do you need to know those things to help somebody lose weight temporarily? No, you could go with a macro calculator, but none of those things are going to teach the person how to implement it in their busy life, how to implement it when they travel, how to deal with it when they've got 2 sick kids. Those are the other kind of the intangibles that you have to get from the person, that I feel like is probably the reason that I have more success than the average person in helping their clients keep the weight off. I think that's probably the difference, is when you build it around the client, it's much easier for them to keep doing it when you're gone, as opposed to pushing them into a diet box. As soon as you leave and the accountability is gone, there goes the diet, right? So I go about it more of like an educational way or more of a teaching approach. Right?
So this is something I dealt with in my past. I would always get insane sugar cravings at night. So based on your nutritional education, how do people handle sugar cravings at night? What's the process that people go about to handle that?
Essentially, sugar helps people stay in REM sleep longer and helps them get more recovery out of their sleep. The reason you're likely craving, because I get a lot of clients who say exactly what you say, where they either wake up or they can't seem to get to sleep unless they eat like something sweet and carbohydrates. And that's a sign that A, you have low blood sugar, and B, we know that carbohydrate ingestion late at night improves recovery and improves sleep. So I've always found it ironic how bodybuilders put such a priority on sleep and GH release and recovery and all this stuff. But then they'll cut carbs late at night, right? And they won't want to eat late at night. And I go, well, why aren't you eating late? Well, I don't want to get stored as fat. And I go, well, if you eat the same number of calories, it doesn't matter. We have research to show that ingesting carbs late at night improves your recovery and your sleep. So you're hurting yourself by not eating carbs late at night. So that's an example of where Eddie is hurting somebody, right? Because if he convinces that person not to eat sugar, and now they're having these intense sugar cravings at night. And if they just gave in, instead of putting that sugar at 3 p.m. that day, when they want a candy bar and they walk to the pantry, they put it at 10 p.m. that night and they have the candy bar at 10 p.m. before they go to bed, they would have slept through the whole night. But if somebody online tells them that eating carbs late at night is bad, they're going to purposefully try to avoid doing that. When if they just leaned into that intuitively, it would have been way easier for them to see success.
I went through that myself. Like
don't eat before bed.
Right.
Super bad. Remember that?
Yeah.
You still hear it to this day. It's the biggest.
Yeah.
That's probably like the worst one that I hate out of all of them. Because it's like, really? Don't eat before bed? A lot of people do it.
And I think that comes from two places. I think first place it comes from, because this is one I get asked about all the time. And obviously, if it worked that way, people who live in countries where they eat very late at night would be significantly. Spain, everyone in Spain would be significantly overweight. They eat very late. Most of their calories are ingested late at night. I mean, there's lots of examples that we know that that's not true.
Very intriguing. So, how does a natty bodybuilder's diet differ from an unnatural bodybuilder's diet, from your perspective?
But simply being a bodybuilder, like an IFPA pro or something, if you look at the diets of these people, look at natty bodybuilders, you would be surprised at the nutrition a lot of natty bodybuilders who are in the IFPA, not the IFBB, follow. It's much different than much lower protein, much higher carbohydrate. It's much more in line with what you would see prescribed to a regular person, right? Because they need the carbs to be able to build the muscle. They're not going to be able to do it without the carbs. Carbohydrates are causing insulin release. You don't have insulin if you're in the IFPA, right? You're not an IFBB pro. You can't be using insulin, right? So you need more carbs to build the muscle. You need more carbs to maintain the muscle when you cut. If you're on PEDs, you don't have to worry as much about that. You can spare a lot more muscle with PEDs if you cut your carbs. So all of these numbers change. Your MPS rate goes up. So your protein would be higher. Your carbs would be lower. So all of these things, when, that's kind of what I was talking about. Bodybuilder versus bodybuilder enhanced are two completely different things with nutrition. The principles that dictate somebody losing weight would not change for somebody doing a natural show. That person continuing to get leaner and leaner is not going to suddenly, the first law of thermodynamics is not going to suddenly get broken, right? They're not going to suddenly stop losing weight if they're in a calorie deficit. If you're in a calorie deficit, you have to lose weight. Otherwise, you would power down like a robot or just die, right? So those things won't change for a natural person. Now, if you're enhanced, I don't work with I don't know anything about enhanced people. I don't know. I mean, I have some idea of the general increase in muscle protein synthesis and things like that. But from a recovery perspective, it's just not my population I work with. So when you're talking enhanced, a lot of the things that we've talked about do change.
All right. So this is a little bit of an off-topic question, but it's mainly about you and your personality. Why do you wear hoodies so much?
I got bullied. We kind of joked about the hoodie, right?
Yeah.
About being a comfort object and stuff like that. My last name is actually Hoodie. But I've worn hoodies since I was in high school. If it was 115 out, and I'm not like that anymore. Obviously, I wear t-shirts and tank tops and stuff now. But back then, this was my comfort object, not this one in particular. But I would wear a hoodie. People would call me Hoodie, like people do now. So that was probably the hardest thing for me, was getting bullied and then overcoming that and distancing myself from that person. It's been one of the hardest things. Like you said yourself, poor relationship with food. That was a lot. It's been a big challenge for me to overcome. Not something I am fully overcome by any means. There are still days that I slip up from what I had intended, even if my diet isn't overly restrictive. Maybe that day I just feel like rebelling for some reason, right? Food is my struggle, though. I would say food has been my biggest struggle. Everyone has something different. For me, it's food. For some people, it's porn. For some people, it's drugs. For some people, it's alcohol. For some people, it's sex. For some people, it's whatever. But pretty much everybody, except for those really cool people out there, have some vice that is not a positive thing. That's a negative thing. Now, there are people, I will say, amazing, congratulations, who don't have any vices. And they just they get high off of doing the good stuff in life. And more power to you guys. But food was my thing, right? Food was my struggle. So I would say overcoming you kind of mentioned it, my food addiction was probably the most challenging thing, which in turn led to sustainable weight loss. So sustainable weight loss, but more so improving that relationship with food. That was harder for me than the actual physiological change that I created. But losing 120 was a lot easier than healing my relationship with food, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice, man.
Yeah.
That's
and
awesome.
I think you get that too. It sounds like you've had some struggles with eating throughout your life and stuff too, in that relationship. And I'm sure you would say the same thing. Probably truly harder to beat that than to go in the gym and tear up a 4-plate squat or something, right? Like that's the fun stuff, ironically, for us. And it's the other stuff that's the bigger challenge.
It was amazing having you as a guest on my podcast, Matt. Thank you so much for coming on. It was an absolute pleasure.
You obviously love what you do, and you're blowing up quick, and I think you'll outgrow this here pretty quick.
Thank you so much for saying that, Matt. That really means the world. And that wraps it up for Conan's Cave.
Instagram is at Matt Hoodie, MattHoodie, just like a hoodie. I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions to a lot of the things in here, quite a few things we touched on. So if you do have questions, try to nicely drop them below. That's the only thing I'll say. Just be nice, please.